gotta do what I gotta do.
Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of the MMA Rundown. My name is Ben Gordon. I'll be your host. And with this being the first edition, I figure I might as well go into a little bit of detail as far as who I am and what sort of background I have in MMA and what I kind of offer in this MMA Rundown podcast. So, I started watching back around UFC 87. I've been a fan ever since, been following very closely. Started training back in 2011. I've been training ever since. And I also have a marketing background with a little bit of focus in sports in my past where I've worked with some hockey teams. So I've got an idea of what the UFC is trying to do as a business, and I can kind of bring that perspective in, the business perspective in, the entertainment perspective in, but also the sport perspective and some of the more technical aspects. So for this week, we've got UFC 209 coming up. That's going to be the big event for us. Just a quick rundown right now. I'll go through the card, and then for the main fights, the bigger fights, we'll get through those later, starting with Khabib and Tony. So on the prelim card for UFC Fight Pass, it starts off with Albert Morales versus Andre Sukhamath. Not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. Obviously, if he can get some big wins coming up, we'll all know how to pronounce his name. Kind of like Joanna Jędrzejczyk back when she started. Nobody would even try to pronounce that name correctly, and obviously now you have to know what it is. The next fight would be Amanda Cooper, who is coming off a loss in the tough finals against Cynthia Calvillo. Tyson Pedro versus Paul Craig main events that card. Then on the Fox Sports 1 card, there's Mark Goodbeer versus Daniel Spitz. Yuri Alcantara versus Luke Sanders. This is going to be an interesting fight. Yuri Alcantara, when he first came on the scene, looked like he had a really good opportunity to be a top prospect. Ran into Uriah Faber, lost a decision there, and really hasn't been able to rise in the ranks since. But for him, he's very skilled. Black belt on the ground, very good striking. He's the kind of guy where if he can string a few wins together, he can find himself towards the top of the division. Speaking of top of divisions, we've got Mirsad Bektic versus Darren Elkins, which is going to be a very interesting fight on the prelim cards. Darren Elkins is coming off of a win against Godofredo Pepe. Mirsad Bektic is being looked at as one of the top featherweight prospects. This is going to be an interesting fight for him because Elkins is really good about getting people to the ground and just kind of grinding them out. And with Bektic, this is going to be probably one of the better wrestlers he's faced in quite a while. If he can keep Elkins off of him and keep this fight on the feet, there's a good chance he's going to be able to finish this one, but if not, it could be a tough fight for him, and it can possibly bring him back a couple of rungs. And the main event on the FS1 card is Marcin Tybura versus Luis Henrique. Heading to the main card, the first fight of the night is Alistair Overeem versus Mark Hunt. This is going to be a very interesting fight. Now, these guys fought back in 2012 in Dream. Very quick fight, actually ended up getting to the ground really quickly, and Alistair Overeem won by armbar. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes. There are a lot of things going on right now that make this a much different situation than the last time, and we'll discuss those as we get to it. Lando Venata versus David Tamer. Venata, of course, made his UFC debut against Tony Ferguson, nearly defeated him in the first round, and then ended up getting caught in a Darce choke in the second. Looked fantastic in his last fight against John McDessie, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Tamer is a pretty good striker, but he's still fairly unknown. This can be a very interesting fight. I think this has very high fight of the night possibility for it. Rashad Evans versus Dan Kelly will be an interesting fight. Kelly's more of a grappler, which will be good for Evans, who recently had issues with his brain scans. It's interesting to see that he's going to be fighting right now. I'm not entirely sure what the medical side of that is, that he could be denied a couple months ago, and now he's being given a license to fight. Hopefully everything's clean on that end. There's Khabib versus Tony in the co-main event. This fight is probably going to be your people's main event. This fight's going to likely determine who's next to fight Conor McGregor in MMA. It's a very interesting style matchup, and there's just a lot to dig in on that one. And then the main event will be the rematch of Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson, who fought back at UFC 205, with that fight going to a draw, with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson winning 3 rounds to Woodley's 2, but Woodley having a 10-8 round, which depended on which judge gave it to, whether it was the first round or the fourth.